Hi, and welcome to the Social at Scale podcast. I'm Cameron Brain, your host and the CEO and co-founder of Everyone Social. This podcast is dedicated to the topic of employee advocacy and how marketing, sales, and recruiting teams use it to drive efficient ROI. Let's get going.
Cool. Well, why don't you tell me just your role in particular? It looked like, are you specifically focused on hiring sales talent, or I guess, what do you do at Coupa?
So sales and pre-sales talent across EMEA and APAC at varying levels, from entry-level sales roles through to RVPs, AVPs, etc. So quite a wide range of level of experience across those two disciplines.
How many folks are, I know Coupa's grown. When we started working with Coupa as a client, I think it was sub 1,000 employees. And I saw, I think on your profile that you guys are over 3,000 today. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's about 3,400 at the moment.
Wow. And still continuing to look for sales roles. Is that kind of one of the primary areas of growth for you guys?
Yeah, it's pivotal for the business's success that we continue to grow the sales teams to bring in the revenue to drive the rest of the business. So tell me, I mean, you have a sizable network on LinkedIn, and I'm guessing LinkedIn probably isn't, the only channel that you're using kind of in a digital in regard to digital social media. But how does social media, factor into your role, the roles of your teammates? Like, basically, how do you use it? Well, I'm probably a little bit different to my teammates, who are probably not as enthusiastic as I am. I come from, I've been recruiting since before the internet. You wouldn't believe it looking at me. I'm used to using very old methods to try and find candidates. So then all of a sudden, when the internet came along, it was like, wow, this is incredible. I was like a kid in a sweet shop. And then LinkedIn came along, which was the first kind of social tool that we could use to engage with candidates. I was in seventh heaven. And as the internet and social has evolved, I've continued to be a supporter. I worked for a company called Wonderman, which is a marketing and advertising organization, global part of the WPP network. And within the organization that I recruited for, they had a huge social team. So I always took a vested interest in listening and seeing what they were doing. And they run some incredible campaigns for various large brands, both in the UK and global. So I really began to understand the power of social media. And now, as we are in a situation from a recruiting point of view where it's very, very difficult to find you or be heard, because everybody's shouting the same message, I'm hiring, and everybody's using the same LinkedIn message, you're not being heard. So we have to look at different ways to engage with candidates, and it's a lot softer of an approach, but it is effective. It takes a lot longer to see the return on investment, but I continue on a daily basis to try and find ways to engage with candidates via social. My teammates are a little bit, as I say, less enthusiastic, more relying, I would imagine, on advertising and on reach out on LinkedIn.
They all kind of work together, though. I mean, isn't that kind of your feeling? Is like, hey, run the ads and do these other things, but
they complement each other. Absolutely, yeah,
absolutely. And for
I was going to say,
ahead, Paul.
Sorry, Cameron. I was going to say that's the beauty of Everyone's Social, that it allows me to share Coupa content very quickly and very effectively just by the click of a button. I'm thirsty for Coupa to keep putting content on there for me to share, and I do now create. I've got my own channel on the platform where I'm creating more sort of HR based themed content. But it's just so easy to use, and it's brilliant.
I appreciate that.
Without giving you guys too much credit.
Yeah, no, I mean, the credit goes to you and everyone else who actually uses the product, right? I mean, like all we try to do is just build tools that are hopefully useful, that, help the company, like Kira and team, as you may know. I presume she's still involved. I know she was in the early years. just make sure that the content is accessible to everyone, and then, to give you and everyone else really, really simple tools that hopefully don't get in the way of, your day to day and all the other things that you've got to do. Just one, being that you're in EMEA and we have a bunch of clients, I would say for us, our primary market's the US, and then our secondary is Europe. And I think there's a lot of kind of cultural connection with companies in Europe and kind of their use of social. Any other networks other than LinkedIn that you use pretty actively, or is it really primarily LinkedIn for you right now?
LinkedIn, yeah. I dabble with Twitter, and probably the only way I'm dabbling with Twitter is through your platform. But primarily it's LinkedIn, because LinkedIn, you can identify your audience and really pinpoint and target that audience.
Yeah. Anything, over the last few years in terms of your use of social in general, LinkedIn in particular, that you found really works? Any tips you'd offer to folks who are trying to kind of build their network and leverage social as a recruiter?
From a LinkedIn point of view and building your network, I think everybody, again, it's a rush just to connect with someone for the sole purpose of then contacting them, and all they do is just send a connection request, and again, people are fed up with being approached like that. So there has to be a lot more thought process that goes into connecting with somebody these days. So if I see somebody, if it was yourself, as somebody I wanted to connect with, I'd probably spend 1 or 2 weeks looking at your content, beginning to like your content, beginning to make comments on content that you're commenting on, before finally, within a couple of weeks, I'll then send you a connection request saying, look, over the last few weeks, really like some of the content you've put on. I see you share the same views as me, because then you stand a very good chance of actually connecting with that person. Because, I do it on a daily basis. I dismiss people. I ignore them on a daily basis because I know they're connecting with me to sell me something. Brand awareness, the only reason I connected with you, respect, is because of who you work for or the company you own. We need to get our brand out there and be heard. So when I send a connection request, people go, that's Paul Copley from Coupa.
To be able to go from a few hundred employees up to 3,400 plus.
Yeah,
so
I wish we had foresight to get a social media team together when we were at 400, 500 people.
Yeah,
we've only just employed somebody now to look at our social branding and footprint. So it's crazy, really. And I spend probably 70% of the calls I do in a week actually explaining who Coupa are and what we do. And Rob Bernstein himself says we're the most successful company that nobody's heard of. For me, it's not Coupa at times, it's Hooper. Nobody knows us. And that's crazy. A market leader in what we do in an industry which used to be a nice to have, our solution, it's now a must have. With the global economy the way it is, it's a must have. But still, we spend too much time just trying to get the brand out there in front of people. So
that's interesting. Okay, so you use social heavily yourself. You're I think I would say first and foremost doing that for your role as a recruiter, but a lot of the ways in which clients use our product is kind of to get everyone to just spread the word, and it sounds like that's something that you feel like Coupa would benefit from as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'd love to say to you is if that competition that you done, which you probably didn't hear of, I won $50, and $50 is no good for us in the UK. I can't spend it. But if you can get more engagement from the Coupa population, that would be key for me. That would help with my role. You look at the leaderboard, and I go on it. I'm so competitive. I'm in fourth now throughout the whole company. But really, if you go down past the top 10, you can quite clearly see that people haven't scored enough points. They're not using it, and it's so easy to use. And I imagine 80% of people in Coupa don't know about the platform, which is crazy. That's probably our fault. We're not shouting about it enough. But if you guys can find a way to get Coupa employees engaged in the platform, it would help you naturally, but it would help us.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Paul. We're like one of the kind of rules of thumb that, we use as a guide for ourselves as it relates. It very much is our problem as well, right? Like clients they can have fantastic teams running these programs, and it does make a huge difference. But, at the end of the day, we have to have a product that draws everyone in, makes it as simple as possible, gets them coming back, et cetera. And, every kind of population within a company, all the employees, almost kind of without exception, breaks down into kind of three bands. The top, which I would put you in, is 1% just pro users, really oftentimes content creators themselves, which you're doing. I see that on your timeline. Below that, you have 9%, which are really engager sharers, right? They're not necessarily going as far as you and creating content, but they're sharing. And then you've got the 90%, which are just the consumers, right? They're not yet ready to take really any of the actions that you've taken. And so that's a big part of what we're thinking. We're pretty good with the 1 and the 9, figuring out how to get the 90%, on board and just doing something, right? Like it's probably not going to be anywhere close to what you're doing, but can we get those folks, to be consistently sharing maybe once or twice a month? Those are, because to your point, it's like, we're we're a much smaller company size wise, but be you a recruiter or a salesperson, who wants to spend 70% of your time explaining what the company does, right? Like, let's fast forward and get to a place where it's like, that's understood. And, it's a matter of choice between us or something else. Let's see. I have a question for you, and you already kind of touched on this, which is, and you may have seen this at Coupa. It sounds like you had some kind of interesting experience with Wonderman before. There are lots of companies, and Coupa's been a wonderful client over the years, and a real kind of early adopter, even though there may be some areas where you feel like, hey, let's get more aggressive and push it broader. One of our challenges as a business, very similar to what kind of you're saying, is 95% plus of all the companies out there for us that would benefit from our program are not aware of it, and they haven't even necessarily thought of the fact that hey, we should be enabling all of our people to be better leveraging social at work, sharing important content, those kind of things. I just wonder from your side, as someone who's made the investment, it's a part of your routine, you've seen benefit, what would you say to a senior level leader who isn't quite convinced of the value of having their people, leverage social as a part of work for recruiting, for sales, for, brand awareness?
I think one of the key for me is that everybody, there's a lot of content being shared on LinkedIn, but some of it, from a corporate point of view, is awful, and it's probably not being monitored and policed. Whereas I think Everyone's Social actually gives the company the opportunity to police the content that's being shown. It's a dangerous world. It's a free world out there. Anybody can share anything. And honestly, some of the stuff that people are sharing about their organisations is quite dreadful. And I think if the CEO was able to see what they were sharing, they'd be frightened. They'd run a mile. So to give the CEO an opportunity to actually police and share really good content, or give the employees the opportunity to share really good, thought-provoking content on a regular basis, it's an absolute no-brainer.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Social at Scale podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please be sure to subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, please let me know. You can access past episodes on our site at everyonesocial.com/podcast. As always, please feel free to connect with me directly on Twitter or LinkedIn, and look forward to seeing you next time.